As I sat in the dimly lit bar, ruminating over the recent turn of events, I struggled to find any blatant signs of her unfaithfulness. Despite my best efforts, the discomfort I felt came from a series of minor accumulating details rather than one obvious clue. Something was definitely off, yet I couldn't put my finger on what it was. I sensed some kind of mischief but had no hard evidence. I had no clue who, what, or where this was happening, to the point where I questioned my own sanity. Was I imagining things? Maybe I was blowing this out of proportion, creating scenarios of her infidelity in my mind. But with whom? I couldn't say. My gut twisted with uncertainty. I had a feeling rather than knowledge that something was wrong. Maybe this was the start of an affair, possibly just a fleeting indiscretion. The more I thought about it, the more convinced I became. It felt like I'd been trapped in this mindset for weeks, but how long had I actually been suspicious? I took another sip of my whiskey. The ice clinked against the glass, signaling it was time for a refill. I caught the bartender's eye and he nodded, swapping my empty glass for a fresh double whiskey on the rocks. He gave me a sympathetic smile as if he understood my inner turmoil. He must have seen that look countless times. His eyes showed a mix of support and empathy as he noticed the distress on my face. The warm, sweet taste of the whiskey soothed my throat with each sip. I resolved to calm down, scanning the room and taking in the other patrons. It was quiet, the low hum of conversations blending into the background, heightening my sense of unease. There was no joy here. The patrons' faces were blank, blending into the crowd without distinction. Everyone seemed plain and forgettable. A woman in her 40s, overdressed for the occasion, looked a bit desperate. An older man was buying her drinks, hopeful and attentive. He didn't need to try so hard, she was already hooked. The rest of the patrons seemed to be just killing time, the rain outside adding to the gloom. Soon they'd all run out of reasons to stay and head home. I still hadn't decided what to do next. So, what's going on? I turned toward the voice. She looked at me, her eyes searching mine. I opened my mouth to respond, but no words came out. She stood there, water dripping from her coat, slowly taking it off. "Why are you here, Emily?" "I was worried about you and had a feeling I'd find you here. So here I am. Do you want to talk?" I looked at her, trying to compose myself. "Are you worried about me? Why? What's happening?" I studied her, wondering if she had any ulterior motives. Could I trust her? I took another sip of my whiskey and ordered her a soda, which the bartender served with a flourish, smiling as he glanced at Emily. She met his gaze, returning his smile as his eyes lingered on her figure. Emily waited until he left before speaking. There was a mutual uncertainty between us, an unspoken power struggle. I expressed my concerns about her recent behavior, hinting that she seemed troubled. I wanted her to open up about what was going on. When I looked into her green eyes, I was reminded of how easily she understood me. This mutual understanding was something I cherished. Despite our occasional disagreements, we had always been honest with each other. But there were some things we didn't need to discuss explicitly, we just knew. She reassured me that she was fine and that our relationship was solid, easing my worries. I watched as she took in my words. It was clear she didn't believe me. My heart sank, and I tried to push the feeling away, but it lingered. Emily took a slow sip from her glass, her gaze never leaving mine. "Oh God, this is it," I thought. She set her glass down, interlaced her fingers, and leaned forward. I tried to act casual, asking what she knew and what I was supposedly hiding. She suggested we stop pretending and be honest with each other. The bartender glanced our way, subtly eavesdropping. She then proposed we move to a more private booth, away from prying eyes. As we relocated, I noticed the bartender's disappointed look. Once seated, the tension between us was palpable as we prepared for the conversation ahead. I mentioned that I had participated in a competition and asked for her thoughts. She saw through my attempt to deflect and reminded me that we had known each other for a long time. Emily pressed me to share my thoughts, reminding me of how long she'd known Lisa. She reminisced about how Lisa had always been part of our circle, even confessing that Lisa had a crush on her when she dated Lisa's brother Mike. Mike, being 3 years older, started dating me when I turned 20. Lisa and I hit it off right from the start, much to Mike's frustration. They were complete opposites, their clashes frequent and intense. 2 years later, Mike and I got married, dreaming of a perfect life together. We both had good jobs, making enough to live comfortably. Lisa, who had her wild years in her late teens and early 20s, now at 25, seemed to want something more serious. She appeared to have outgrown her reckless phase, becoming someone any man would be lucky to know. Mike and I had been married for almost 5 years, with our anniversary just a month away, if we made it that far, I thought. Lisa was not just an attractive woman, but also someone I saw as a friend and a sister-in-law. Tears formed in my eyes as I searched for words. Emily's words kept echoing in my mind, "I know." Emily's fingers gently touched mine, then squeezed them tightly, offering both support and something more. My heart felt like it was shattering piece by piece. "All right, Tom, if you won't say it, I will. She's cheating on you, you know it." "Of course I knew. What are you going to do about it now?" Her words hit me hard, but I resisted understanding, trying to rationalize what I knew. If I didn't truly acknowledge it, then it couldn't hurt me, and I wouldn't have to face it. Emily looked at me, her eyes seeing right through my facade. Was I in shock or denial? "Tom, I love you, but for heaven's sake, wake up." "I'm sure it's just a misunderstanding or something," I tried to convince myself. Suddenly, Emily's eyes flared with anger. She slapped me across the face. The bartender stopped polishing a glass. "Everything okay over there?" I raised my hand. "Yes, we're fine." I touched my cheek, feeling the burn from the slap, sure her handprint was still there. "I'm sorry, Tom, but sometimes you drive me nuts. You know how much I care about you, and I can't stand to see you hurt like this. Face the truth, this is happening and we need to deal with it." I swallowed hard, rubbing my cheek as reality sank in. The sting from her slap jolted me awake. "All right, let me start. I'm sure you have some idea, but I'll go on anyway. A few weeks ago, I was with Lisa when her phone rang. She stepped out to answer it, which was strange since we're family. What was she hiding from me? I nodded, steeling myself for what was to come. As I sipped my whiskey, Emily continued. "It was odd, so when I got the chance, I looked at her phone. She's so trusting there wasn't even a passcode on it. The call was from a guy named Richard. I had no idea who he was, but I decided to keep an eye out." "Who's this Richard?" I asked, trying to remember if I'd ever heard the name. "I found out about him a week later. He's someone she knew before you. They reconnected through some social network or chat app. They've been messaging for a while now, but I had no idea. I just noticed these small, subtle things." "Yeah, I get it." It all seemed to fit their interactions, nothing blatant, but it felt like everything was aligning for them. "So, it's just two old friends catching up?" "It seems that way." "That's how it started anyway." "Are you suggesting something happened?" "Yes." "And you didn't see any warning signs?" "Just that it felt like things were off, and the timing was always convenient for them." Emily looked at me like I was being naive. "What?" I returned her look. "Tom, I care about you deeply, but wake up." Reality hit me harder as her words became clearer. Damn, this was serious. I took another sip, gathering my nerve. "How far do you think it went, or do you know?" Emily met my eyes, her gaze steady but sad. That brief look told me everything. When, how, where, I demanded, my mind racing, anger bubbling up. The fight between reason, sense, and raw rage had begun. I know she's seen him at least 3 times in the past 2 weeks. At first I wasn't sure, but 2 days ago I confirmed it. While having lunch with a coworker of Lisa's, she let something slip by accident. I didn't react then, and Lisa covered it up smoothly, so I let it pass. It turns out she met him for lunch twice and once for dinner last week. Does that fit with what you've seen? I stared at Emily, absorbing her revelations. Recently, there were times I called Lisa's office to plan a lunch, but she wasn't there or had just left. Was that when she met him? Last week, she attended a spur-off themament seminar she insisted on going to. It was scheduled for the evening, and she got home late, past midnight, talking about how the event dragged on and how her team grabbed drinks at the hotel bar afterward. I also remember there was no intimacy that night, and she took an unusually long shower before bed. My mind reeled, spinning with confusion as I processed these painful truths, each one twisting the knife deeper in my heart. "To hell with this," I suddenly blurted out. Emily's eyes widened with concern. "Tom, what's your plan? Don't do anything reckless. You don't want to end up in jail because of her." Meeting her gaze, I realized she sensed the shift in me. My face felt like stone, my heart a solid block of ice, and my body braced for what lay ahead. She could see it too. "To hell with all this. I won't tolerate this any longer. It ends now. Shell pay. Hell pay too." Rage simmered within me. My muscles tensed, fists clenched. I've never been one for violence, sure. I had my share of fights in my youth, but I never sought out trouble. Sometimes, though, you have to face the truth head-on, and that's exactly what I intended to do. It had been a long time coming, but it needed addressing and fast. "Tom, whatever you're thinking, take a moment. Consider your options. Don't act rashly without a plan, or things will spiral out of control. You need to strategize and prepare, or you'll end up hurt," Emily cautioned. Her words cooled my rage, penetrating the rational part of my brain and making sense. Oddly, it helped me regain some composure, realizing my suspicions were valid. At least I wasn't losing my mind. "Is she with him now?" I asked, glancing at Emily and noticing tears welling up in her eyes as a solitary tear traced down her delicate face. "Yes, she's with him right now. That's why I came to find you," she revealed. Rage surged within me, prompting me to pound my fist on the table. Heads turned in the bar, drawing attention. I signaled to the bartender, who responded with a knowing half-smile. "How did he know?" "Do you have any idea where exactly?" I inquired, hoping for some clarity. "No clue, but tomorrow I'll meet with my friend again to gather more information. I know he's married with kids, but I'm unsure of his exact whereabouts. I'll do my best to find out. It might help," she responded. I reached for her hand, gripping it tightly, and wiped a tear from her cheek. "Thanks, Emily. I know this is tough for you, but I truly appreciate it. What's your plan?" She regarded me with concern. "I can't act impulsively, not yet anyway. But when I do, it'll be final. They'll both face consequences. For now, I'll safeguard what's mine and gather evidence for my next move." Emily eyed me anxiously as I finished my whiskey, catching the bartender's eye. He poured us another round. As he approached, I sensed Emily wanted to speak. I motioned for her to wait until the drinks arrived, then handed the bartender a bill. "Keep the change," I said, dismissing him. "How long before you confront her?" Emily asked. "I need time to strategize. Tomorrow I'll make some calls and secure my assets. She won't get a cent from me if I have my way. It'll be tough for you to be around her, won't it?" "Yes, but in a way it's been like that for weeks now. If she hasn't noticed a change yet, she won't notice anything different." Emily downed her drink in one gulp and stood up abruptly. "I have to go, Tom. Can we talk again tomorrow? I'll gather all the info I can." She donned her coat and I stood helping her. Seeing her so close, I couldn't help but notice how much she resembled her brother. Tears welled in her eyes as I kissed her cheek. "Head home. I'll manage. I'll call you tomorrow." With a smile, she turned away, and I watched her disappear into the dark, rainy night. Taking a deep breath, I settled back into my seat, planning my next move. One thing was clear: they would face consequences, swift, ruthless, and unforgiving. The memories blurred after that. Somehow I awoke in my own bed, my mouth dry as a desert. My head still spun as I rolled over and noticed I was alone. Lisa was nowhere in sight. My senses slowly returned as I heard noises downstairs. I swung my legs off the bed and tried to stand. Oh my God, what did I do to myself last night? I staggered to the bathroom, attempting to shake off the effects of my whiskey-induced haze. Descending the stairs, pain shot through me and my joints protested. Everything throbbed. Peering into the kitchen, I saw her. "Hello, my love. What happened to you last night?" "Do you want to hear about it?" I cursed inwardly. "Just had a drink with an old friend. Got a bit carried away," I said, seating myself and pouring a glass of orange juice. I downed it in one gulp and poured another. "Really? Who was it? Someone I know?" Claire asked, a hint of curiosity in her voice. My mind scrambled for a name. "No, I don't think so. It was Bob, an old buddy from college. Haven't seen him in years. He was in town for business. A flicker of recognition crossed her face. Bob? Did you mention him before? Yeah, I think so. We played football together back in the day. He still remembers you. Claire looked puzzled. Sorry, I don't recall any Bob, but as long as you had fun. She took a seat across from me. Recalling my conversation with Emily, I decided to dig deeper. So, honey, what did you do last night? Anything interesting? When did you get back? She met my gaze, lying smoothly. Oh, nothing much. Finished work, grabbed a bite, and had some drinks. I was home by 9:30. Started to worry about you, but remembered your late meeting. I knew she hadn't come home by then. I was still there at 10 p.m. That's when I'd reached my limit and headed to the bar. Second strike, I thought. I've got a busy morning ahead, so I'll shower and head out. I might be late tonight, so don't wait up. Bob said he'd get in touch. If he stays a few days, we should invite him over. It's nice reconnecting with old friends. Claire's expression remained neutral, but I sensed something beneath the surface. Maybe it'll come back to me later, love. Now hurry or you'll be late. Want me to drive you? You had a bit too much to drink last night. No, I'm fine. I'll grab a taxi to pick up my car. Thanks, though. After downing more orange juice and a couple of painkillers, I got dressed and left the house 30 minutes later, while Claire was still getting ready. I had a chaotic day ahead. One thing was certain: this wouldn't drag on. I clenched my fists at the thought of Claire with Bob. He'd pay, and I'd make sure of it. Work was a whirlwind call after call to resolve issues. My assistant handled some, but I had to attend numerous meetings. By mid-morning, the rush eased, giving me a bit of time to tackle personal matters. Closing my office door, I dove into my finances. Within 15 minutes, I had tightened my wallet strings and moved some cash out of easy reach. I also set up a meeting with a lawyer to discuss divorce options. With a few days still ahead, I figured it would give me time to gather more information. While it might not carry substantial weight, it could provide some leverage. Claire had her own bank account and credit card, so no action was necessary there. The issue lay in accessing our joint account, but I swiftly closed that avenue, ensuring she couldn't touch more than what remained. My personal account was safeguarded with only a small balance, the rest securely withdrawn. Given our childless status, any split would likely be straightforward. I resolved privately that reconciliation depended solely on Claire's confession and plea for forgiveness. Any reluctance would spell the end for us. This realization weighed heavily on me as I sat at my desk, reflecting on the day's events and decisions. Did I need further insight into Bob's character and more evidence, or was my knowledge enough to confront them both? Interrupting my thoughts, the phone rang. Hello, it's me, Emily. How are you, Tom? Oh, caught up with things, plans, trying to make sense of it all. Interestingly, I've made some progress. Got more intel on this guy from a friend. His name's Bob Stone, and he's married. I've also got his address and workplace. A friend who knows Claire recently spotted her with him. According to her, they're getting quite close. Despite their efforts to hide it, the signs are clear. Has she seen them together? I asked. Yes, they were at a restaurant the other evening after the seminar. They lingered after everyone else had left. She mentioned they seemed very comfortable with each other. Well, it's a start. I'm certain there are CCTV cameras there if needed. Please provide me with his details. I need to get to the bottom of this. It's eating me up, and I'm not sure how much longer I can hold it together. Emily gave me the details, and within minutes I located his social media profile and found his photo. I felt a jolt of recognition. Where and when had I seen this face before? Glancing at my watch, I saw it was almost lunchtime. I thought about calling Claire, maybe to set up a meeting or just to stir things up. My heart sank as I dialed her number, my stomach knotting as I heard her answer. Hi, darling, she greeted, recognizing my number. Hey, sweetheart, what's your lunch plan? Any chance we can meet up? Oh, I'm sorry, dear. I have an appointment in 30 minutes that will take up the whole day. I was just going to grab something quick at the grocery store nearby. Everything okay? What's up with the meeting? Anything exciting? I asked, trying to sound casual. Just the usual stuff with a new client. It's Mr. Stone, she said. Her words hit me like a sledgehammer. Was she mocking me? I felt a surge of anger but forced myself to stay calm. Nice. Are you ready? I managed to say, my voice tight. Yes, I'm here, she replied. Why do you ask? You deceitful liar, I thought. Strike three. Both you and Mr. Stone are going to face the consequences soon. No mercy. Total destruction. Yes, honey, I'm here. Sorry, I got lost in thought. Anyway, I have to run, and I know you have to get ready for your meeting, too. Have a good time, and I'll catch up with you later. Bye, love you. Bye, she replied, and I ended the call seething with rage. I sat there, fists clenched, when my assistant popped her head in through the door. Tom, I'm heading to the deli. Want me to grab you anything? I pondered for a moment. Yeah, surprise me. Just make sure it's something hearty, with plenty of protein. I'm craving something substantial. She gave me an odd look, but nodded before closing the door. She couldn't shake the feeling that her boss was acting strangely. He'd been holed up in his office all morning. Business as usual, but there was an undercurrent of something brewing. She just knew it. Meanwhile, Emily called her sister's office and stepped into the lobby, only to see her sister exiting the elevator with a tall, dark-haired man. He looked around 30, maybe a few years older. She recognized him from his photo on the internet, Bob Stone. Standing there, her sister seemed taken aback. Emily, what are you doing here? Her sister's discomfort was palpable, her plans clearly disrupted. I just thought I'd swing by to see you and maybe grab lunch, Emily said with an innocent smile. Well, Mr. Stone and I have a business lunch planned, so maybe another time, her sister interjected, extending her hand to him. Bob Stone, pleasure to meet you. Emily replied, How long have you known Claire? Bob seemed momentarily puzzled by her question. Claire began to pull Emily away. Listen, Emily, we really have to go. We have a meeting. Catch up with you later. Emily grinned as she watched the couple leave and step into a waiting taxi. She caught her sister's glance as the vehicle drove off. I sat in my office, devouring a hearty sandwich loaded with meat, savoring each bite as I contemplated my next moves. With confirmation from Emily that Claire had left her office, I called her secretary and learned she'd be out all day. Perfect, I thought. Financial matters sorted, locksmith ready, lawyer on standby. Tonight would be the first step. I planned to toy with this couple before making my move. My father's advice echoed in my mind. Keep it simple, be direct, obliterate them. Few words, but potent. Maybe he'd forgotten, but it was coming back. It was imminent. That evening I was at home when Claire walked in. She looked her usual stunning self, nothing out of the ordinary. She smelled normal too, until I went in to kiss her. The faint scent of men's cologne lingered. She noticed my gaze. I didn't say anything, kissed her lightly on the cheek, and headed for the door. Where are you going? Everything okay? I'm fine. Just got a problem to sort out, heading over to Jerry's. He asked me to join a poker game with some work buddies, figured it might help clear my head. Won't be out too late. With that, I shut the door, gritted my teeth, and hopped into my car. Easing down the driveway, I drove to Jerry's house. He guided me into his garage. Jerry and I go way back. He's always been a bit of a rebel and had run-ins with the law in the past, but with his combat skills, he's just the ally I need for this. You don't mess with a cage fighter. Jerry's a big guy, just over 6 feet tall and weighing about 220 pounds, all muscle. Trust me, you don't want to cross him. With a personality to match his size, he's a force to be reckoned with. We've been close pals since school. I gave Jerry a call earlier and he offered to assist in any way, no questions asked. Exactly the support I need. We quickly slipped into the garage and I changed into dark overalls and a matching ski mask. We stood there like two silent performers, not uttering a word as we climbed into the inconspicuous car he'd arranged. There was nothing remarkable about it as we drove slowly across town to the address Emily provided. We remained silent, having planned it all out in advance. Jerry parked the car near Bob Stone's house. There was no activity visible except for a single light on. We waited quietly. When the front door opened, we saw him exit, get into his car, and drive off. Jerry trailed him at a safe distance. Knowing his destination, there was no need to rush or feel anxious. Parking at the driving range was easy. We stayed in the car while Bob retrieved his usual 50-ball bucket, a routine he apparently followed weekly. It's remarkable what you can learn online with the right search. We settled in. the radio softly playing Kenny Rogers in the background. Jerry glanced at me as the lyrics filled the air, then reached over and muted it. We sat in silence, the tension between us almost unbearable. I had to fight every instinct to leap out and confront him, but I knew that would be reckless. As the parking lot gradually emptied, leaving only a few scattered cars, our target finally appeared. Bob Stone strolled toward his vehicle, oblivious to the danger. Jerry quietly slipped out of our car, his movements fluid and stealthy. Bob was still catching his breath from his golf practice, unaware as he opened the trunk to put away his clubs. Jerry moved swiftly, grabbing Bob and shoving him into the trunk alongside his equipment. A quick punch to the jaw silenced him. Jerry, with his cage-fighting background, was in control, subjecting Bob to a series of painful blows. A few targeted hits to the groin left Bob whimpering before he finally lost consciousness. Jerry shut the trunk with a quiet thud and hurried back to our car. I drove us out of the parking lot, making sure not to attract attention. "That went smoothly," Jerry remarked, peeling off his gloves. "Thanks, Jerry. I owe you big time," I said, my gratitude sincere. "Anytime, Tom. You've always had my back, so I've got yours," Jerry replied. "There's no way to repay you for all you've done for me." "That's what friends are for," I said. "At least your hands are intact, and there were no cameras around. Job well done. Let's head back and kick off this card game. The guys should already be there." We returned and spent the next few hours playing poker, the stakes low but the camaraderie high. Everyone was aware of my situation and offered their support, which bolstered my confidence. I knew I would soon have to confront Claire, but for now I enjoyed the distraction. I stumbled through the door a little past 100 a.m., exaggerating my drunkenness. Jerry had arranged for someone to drive my car back. Claire was awake, waiting for me, her expression a mix of concern and irritation. "Why are you still up? I said I might be late. Are you okay?" I slurred, making a show of tossing my jacket and missing the coat rack by a mile. I collapsed onto the sofa, looking up at her with wide, innocent eyes. Jerry and the guys just dropped me off. They were worried I'd had too much to drink, I mumbled, watching her reaction. Claire sat with her arms crossed, her face twisted in disgust. "What's going on, Steve? Is there someone else? You've been acting so strange lately," she snapped, her patience clearly wearing thin. I chuckled, masking my anger. "All in good time, Claire. Relax. I've just had a rough patch lately. It'll all be over soon." She studied me, my words hanging in the air. She seemed unsure but knew something was wrong. We went to bed and I pretended to fall asleep quickly. Her irritation was palpable, but I remained passive. The next morning, Claire was up early, making coffee while I stumbled into the kitchen, pretending to nurse a hangover. "Good morning, darling. How are you?" "Thank goodness." "I'm feeling better now. Do you have anything for this headache?" I asked, reaching for the painkiller she tossed my way. I noticed her phone on the table and curiosity got the better of me. She caught me glancing at it and tensed. "Needs charging, sweetheart. Wouldn't want to miss any messages," I said casually, sliding it back to her. I left the kitchen to get dressed, feeling her eyes on me. Bob hadn't texted her this morning, and I saw a flicker of panic in her eyes. She dismissed the thought. It had only been a brief fling, a few lunches, dinners, and 3 hotel stays. Not that she was counting. It was just harmless fun, she rationalized. Steve would never find out. Would he? This thought made her pause. When was the last time she and her husband had been intimate? She couldn't remember. Maybe that's just how it was. She needed to address it soon. She had been so consumed by Bob that she had neglected what was right in front of her. The one thing that could raise Claire's suspicions was my hasty departure. I rushed down the stairs, evading her attempt at a deeper kiss, and hurried out the door, waving and smiling as I drove off around 1100 a.m., heading to work. Feeling mischievous, I texted Claire, "Apologies for today, my dear. I've got a lot on my mind, but it'll sort out soon. Love you. X." I reclined in my chair, waiting for her reaction. Just after lunch, my phone rang. It was Emily. "Tom, what's happening? What's up, Emily?" "Bob Stone was found knocked out in his car trunk at the golf course today. Claire mentioned it, and she's really shaken." I reassured her that these things happen sometimes. especially when it involves people we know. But we shouldn't dwell on it too much. You weren't involved, were you? Wow, was he seriously injured? Not that I care, but no, I had no part in it. He's just a bit roughed up. Heard he has some cuts and bruises, but nothing serious. How did Claire find out? She had a meeting with him today. His company called to say he was in the hospital. His wife made the call. It seems sweet and believable, but convenient. Maybe they won't have it so easy next time. What do you mean, Tom? Accidents happen in strange places, I said cryptically, leaving her with more questions than answers. That night, Claire wasn't home. Her car was gone, and there was no note. I dialed her number. "Where are you, honey?" I asked cheerfully. "Oh, I'm at the hospital visiting a friend." "I'll be home soon. I'm on my way." "All right, hope your friend gets better. See you soon. Love you. Bye." I hung up before she could reply. 30 minutes later, she returned looking exhausted. "How's your friend? Hope it's nothing serious." "She just took a fall and got some nasty bruises." "She'll be home in a few days," Claire replied, taking a sip of coffee. "The other night, one of my company's reps was attacked," she mentioned, leaving the statement hanging. "Oh, really? What happened?" "He was found beaten up and left in his car overnight." "That's awful. Was anything stolen?" "No, it seems they just wanted to rough him up for no reason." "Nothing was taken," she said, her eyes darting nervously. "Is this the same Bob you said you didn't know?" I muttered under my breath. Claire noticed my gaze and realized her mistake. She quickly tried to cover it up, but it was too late. She knew I knew. She hurriedly made her way to the bedroom to change clothes. I suspected she might receive a phone call any second, but from whom? I realized I needed to reassess my plan as things were progressing rapidly. "Claire?" I called out as she ascended the stairs. "I need to step out for a while to handle something. Don't worry, I won't be gone long." I drove to Bob Stone's home address and knocked on the door. A petite, dark-haired woman answered. "Mrs. Stone, you don't know me, but I need to discuss something delicate with you. Can I come in for a moment?" She regarded me with a mix of nerves, curiosity, and caution. "I'm Tom Harris. My wife, Claire Harris, is having an affair with your husband." I paused as a blend of realization and horror flickered across her face. Stepping back, she motioned for me to enter, leading me to the living room. "I assume this concerns both of them," she said, pain evident in her eyes. "Yes, unfortunately. They've been having an affair, and I only discovered it a few days ago. I'm sorry to bring this to your attention. I also know that he's currently in the hospital." Her demeanor collapsed inward, tears streaming down her face. "I suspected as much. I knew he was at it again," she spat. "I'm filing for divorce from Claire. She's had ample chances to come clean, and I can't tolerate her deceit any longer. I'm not sure how long this has been going on, but the fact that she betrayed me is enough. I can't forgive or forget." "Does this relate to the thrashing he endured last night?" she asked, her gaze piercing. I made a swift decision. I can't say I had no hand in it whatsoever. The whole thing caught me off guard, leaving me just as stunned. Whoever did it, I can't say I'm upset about it. Sorry, but that's how I feel. Could he also be involved with someone else's wife? Nothing would surprise me. Well, he can stay far away from my doorstep. I've had my fill of this. That's why we're back here, because he cheated. I left her still seething after providing her with the contact information for my locksmith and lawyer. Oh my God, what a mess, I thought as I hopped into my car and made my way to the hospital, which was just 10 minutes away. I arrived even quicker. Passing through the lobby, I felt a weight lifting from my shoulders, almost allowing a smile to break through. Squeezing into the elevator, I ascended to the 4th floor, where a certain Mr. Bob Stone resided. Consulting the patient directory, I located his room and slipped past the nurse's station unnoticed. I entered his room and quietly closed the door behind me. Bob gave me a puzzled look as I approached his bed. I examined Bob's bandaged face. One eye was swollen shut, the other bloodshot and struggling to focus. Jerry had really done a number on him. "Having trouble recognizing me, Bob? Take your time." "He'll wait," I said with a grin, as he cast a bewildered glance my way. Settling on the edge of his bed, I peered through his facial bandages, noting the severely bruised eye and suspected jaw issues. "You must be in pain," I mused, surveying the elevated bedding supporting his lower body. I winced in mock sympathy. Looks awful. Swiftly snatching the emergency button from his grasp, I tossed it beneath the bed. I playfully jabbed his ribs, prompting a painful squeal. Still can't place me, Bob? Need a hint? His face showed a mix of confusion and fear. Think about the married women you've been involved with and the marriages you've disrupted. Does that help? His eyes met mine, the realization slowly dawning. I'm tied to a woman named Claire. Does that jog your memory? Recognition sparked in his eyes. Got it now? I grinned fiercely as he nodded in understanding. Great. Glad we're on the same page. Now wondering why I'm here. Let's get to it. I'm here with a message from your wife. I paused to let that sink in. She wants you to hear this. Stay away. Don't show up. Divorce papers are coming your way. And just so you know, you're truly contemptible. A tear welled up in his visible eye. Chuckling, I observed his restricted movement and leaned in to meet his gaze. I'm ending my marriage because my wife found pleasure with someone like you. This is just the beginning. We'll encounter each other again, guaranteed. I'll disrupt your life as you've disrupted mine. I won't relent, so be prepared to run. By the way, I'm not responsible for this, I said, keeping him guessing. Raising my fist, I struck his exposed eye. I heard a crunch. He let out a muffled cry before blacking out. I stood up and exited the room. Was I content? Far from it, but it was a start. He'd lie there realizing his error, unable to act. My departure was unnoticed. Had anyone seen me, they'd have noticed my wide smile. I drove home cautiously, gearing up to address my other issue. My anger was contained, but once retaliation started, it was a path I'd eagerly pursue. While the end of my marriage deeply saddened me, her betrayal left no chance of reconciliation. My only solace was that those who wronged me would soon experience even greater pain. I don't easily forgive. Bob Stone's card hinted at a future encounter. Pulling into the driveway, I noticed Claire's car exactly where she'd parked it 2 hours prior. Absent-mindedly, I tapped its hood as I headed to my front door, contemplating this might be my final entry as a married man. A leaden feeling consumed my heart. Upon entering, the accumulated anxieties of recent days felt tangible, pressing down as I made my way to the living room. Approaching the door, I caught the faint sound of the TV. I paused, fixing my gaze on her. Claire was seated on the sofa, exuding palpable fear and apprehension as though expecting imminent repercussions. She seemed to sense the culmination of our charade, though no words had been spoken. Her hands quivered as she tried to maintain composure while I stood observing. Lifting her eyes, fear was unmistakably present. Her lips moved, attempting to speak, but no words emerged. I entered, passing by her to pour myself a JD over ice. I set the glass on the table between us before sitting down. Meeting her gaze, I detected her fear coupled with a hint of defiance. Silently, I reached for my drink and savored a slow sip, feeling its warmth as it went down. My eyes locked onto hers without wavering. She waited. Let her wait, I mused, taking another deliberate sip, maintaining my silence. My face remained impassive as I observed the woman I once deeply loved staring back at me. Though my heart still harbored strong emotions for her, they were now tempered by the pain she'd inflicted without cause. It was time for her to understand my anguish. As I gazed at her, she found no hint of optimism in my expression. We had said so much already, wordlessly. Claire seemed to gather herself, standing taller as if choosing bravery, unaware of my knowledge. Tom, she finally managed to say, her voice trembling, we need to talk. I leaned back, taking another sip of my drink. Yes, Claire, we do, I replied calmly. But first, I want to hear what you have to say. She swallowed hard, trying to steady her voice. I know things haven't been good between us lately. I haven't been honest with you. I raised an eyebrow, feigning surprise. Oh, really? And what exactly have you been dishonest about? Tears welled in her eyes as she struggled to find the words. I've been seeing someone else. It was a mistake, and I regret it deeply. I set my glass down, leaning forward. A mistake, you say? How long has this mistake been going on? She looked down, unable to meet my gaze. "A few months," she whispered. I nodded slowly, the anger simmering just beneath the surface. "A few months. And you expect me to believe you regret it?" "I do, Tom. I swear I do. It didn't mean anything. It was just a distraction." "A distraction," I repeated, my voice cold. "From what? From our marriage? From me?" "From everything," she cried. "I felt so lost, and he made me feel something again." I stood up, towering over her. "And what about now, Claire? Do you still feel something for him?" "No," she sobbed. "It's over. I ended it." I turned away, pacing the room. "Do you know what hurts the most, Claire? It's not just the affair, it's that you lied to me. You betrayed me." "I know," she whispered. "I'm so sorry, Tom. Can you ever forgive me?" I stopped, looking back at her. "Forgiveness? That's a tall order, Claire. You've shattered my trust. You've broken our marriage." She looked up at me, tears streaming down her face. "I'll do anything to make it right. Please, just give me a chance." I sighed, the weight of the situation pressing down on me. "We'll see, Claire. We'll see." Unable to bear the weight of my silent accusation, Claire broke the silence. "Where did you go?" Her eyes were filled with anxiety while I remained motionless and quiet. "Speak to me," she pleaded. I leisurely took another sip of my JD, savoring the moment. Nothing like JD after a hectic day, I mused aloud, noting her growing distress. "What's bothering you, Tom?" she snapped, frustrated by my silent treatment. "Fine, Claire. I'll share my whereabouts if you disclose yours. Deal?" Her eyes met mine, cautious and wary, each of us sizing the other up like wary boxers, uncertain who'd strike first and wary of the counterpunch. I mentioned I was at the hospital visiting a friend. "What's your point?" She reclined in her chair, arms folded, satisfied with her initial response. I leisurely took another sip of my JD. "Darling, I anticipated that response. Care to reconsider?" Her composed facade wavered, fear evident in her eyes. "I was indeed with a friend, just as I stated," I continued. "Claire, what's causing the confusion?" "I'll clarify. I was visiting a friend. Though our relationship is recent, we're growing closer." I scrutinized her reaction closely. Despite her efforts to remain poised, the defiant tilt of her chin betrayed her. "Did I mention her husband, Bob Stone? Does that name ring a bell?" I hinted. The change in her demeanor was clear. It seems her husband had an accident and was hospitalized. Though not severe, he suffered significant bruises. "He's recovering well, which is a relief, isn't it?" I teased, watching Claire's face redden, sensing her apprehension. "So what was your conversation with Mrs. Stone about?" she inquired, both eager and fearful to know. "From what I gathered, her husband appears to be a consistent womanizer or cheater. Upon discovering his infidelity, I believe she deserved to be informed." "Oh my God!" she exclaimed, feeling a constriction in her throat akin to a noose tightening. "Are you all right? Can I get you a drink? Do you know about Bob Stone's indiscretions?" I took a sip of my drink as she struggled to respond, her words failing her. "Let me assist you," I said, looking deeply into her eyes, hoping she'd sense my sincerity. "I'm aware now." Her eyes widened, and she covered her mouth in shock. Observing her face, I saw a mix of disbelief and surprise. Despite seeking some support, my expression remained impassive. "I'm aware of your involvement with Bobby, darling. I've known for some time. Not an eternity, but enough. So, if you have something to confess, now's the time." Refilling my drink, I asked, "You sure you don't want one?" She nodded, and I poured us both generous drinks, returning to sit across from her. Claire took a long sip before speaking. It was meaningless, just physical. It meant nothing, really. It meant absolutely nothing. Remember our vows? Her mention of the "it" was just love-making excuse, ignited anger within me. It was a fleeting moment, Tom. It just happened. Seriously, just happened? Such things don't just occur spontaneously. It requires two consenting adults planning an agreement. Don't belittle me. You and Bobby have been deceiving me for weeks, maybe even months, but it ends now. Both of you can go to hell. It only happened twice, and honestly, it wasn't that enjoyable. The idea was enticing, but the act itself was overshadowed by my constant fear of you discovering it. Well, I've finally uncovered your deceit. I hope jeopardizing our marriage was worth it. Tom, I am genuinely sorry. It was meaningless, and we can work through this. I'll make things right and follow whatever you decide. A sudden, almost manic laugh escaped my lips, causing her to look at me with a realization that this situation was grave. It was an error, but we can mend it. I regret it deeply. Sure, you regret being caught? Would you have stopped if you hadn't been discovered? I doubt it. All the usual excuses pour out so effortlessly from someone unfaithful. Your lies ever since this began are just as fluent. You may believe them, but I certainly won't. Honestly, the woman I once loved and married seems lost. I don't even recognize you anymore. My words seemed to cut through her pretense, and she realized the gravity of our situation. What should I do, Tom? I'll do anything. Is it over between us? While I was away, I reached out to Emily. She's aware of everything, too. She'll be here shortly to pick you up. But where will I go? Are you throwing me out? Her shock became evident as she processed the situation. You're free to go wherever you want, deceitful person. Maybe back to the hospital to see your other man. I don't give a damn. What matters is that you leave. We're finished. I took the last sip of my drink and set the glass down with a firm thud, signaling the conversation's end. Claire stared at me, shocked, when a knock interrupted us. Rising, I greeted Emily at the door. How did everything go? She asked as we returned to the living room, observing her sister who was now crying uncontrollably, her shoulders heaving. Just get her out of here, Emily. I hate to be so direct, but if she stays, I'm concerned about what I might do. Despite her betrayal, I still have feelings for her. Please make it quick. Thanks for handling this, Emily. I'll touch base soon. I poured myself another drink as Emily efficiently packed Claire's belongings. Over the next few minutes, I heard my wife's cries while watching her sister pack and stuff her things into a few suitcases. Removing her from my home took less than 10 minutes. The true challenge lay ahead, removing her from my life entirely and healing. Retribution would aid in this journey. That's what I was waiting now, along with another stiff drink. I gazed at the flames of the bonfire it lit in the backyard, consuming all of Claire's belongings. She had no place in my home anymore. Damn you, I muttered, finishing the bottle and tossing it into the fire.